Imagine standing in the heart of Brooklyn, where the golden sunlight spills over the bustling streets, but hidden beneath it all are dark secrets. This is the story of John, a former Navy SEAL, a father, a husband, with a heart full of love and a past full of turmoil. His life was once filled with warm afternoons spent with his wife Emily and their little daughter Lily, laughter echoing in their small apartment in Carroll Gardens. But then, a horrific explosion on 42nd Street took everything away, leaving him with an unshakable pain. Have you ever wondered what makes a man rise from the ashes of loss? John is not just seeking justice. He's confronting the hidden forces that manipulate New York, from the Gambino crime family to the shadowy power players. With every step, from the dark alleys of Little Italy to the frigid docks, he transforms his pain into strength, determined to uncover the truth. Let's embark on this thrilling journey together. Whose side will you take? Share your thoughts on whether justice will prevail. Brooklyn, New York. On a sunny summer afternoon, warm light filters through the windows of the 200-square-foot apartment in Carroll Gardens, where John and his family have chosen to make their home. The apartment exudes classic beauty with its natural wood interiors, creating a space that feels both cozy and inviting. John, a former Navy SEAL standing 6 feet 2 inches tall, with short brown hair and deep blue eyes, feels a wave of happiness as he watches his wife and daughter getting ready for a fun-filled afternoon. Emily, John's wife, is a talented lawyer with shiny blonde hair, busy in the kitchen preparing the family's favorite steak. The aroma of the grilling meat fills the air, making everything even more inviting. Lily, their little 6-year-old daughter with brown hair and bright blue eyes, just like her dad, stands by the window, peering outside with excitement. "Dad, when are we going to the park?" Lily's laughter rings out, like a cheerful melody, warming John's heart. So familiar with this happy life, John nodded and replied, "We'll head out right now, sweetheart." They left the apartment together, stepping out into the pleasant air of Brooklyn. Prospect Park was just about a mile from home, and with each step it felt like they were diving into a new adventure. John felt a wave of joy swell within him, not just from spending time with his family, but also from the beautiful memories of his past life. As they arrived at the park, the scenery unfolded before them like a vibrant painting. Other kids were playing, their laughter echoing all around. John led Lily to the swing, where she could soar high, feeling the clear blue sky above her. John recalled the tough moments from the past, but now, those memories were just pieces in the happy picture of the present. He pushed the swing for Lily, watching his daughter smile brightly, and his heart swelled with joy. As for Emily, she remained in the kitchen, tending to dinner. The steak was grilling to perfection, and she couldn't help but think about her husband and daughter happily playing outside. Looking through the window, Emily saw the sun slowly setting, creating a breathtaking scene. She reminded herself that these moments were precious, family moments spent together, sharing the best things in life. When all three returned home, dinner was ready. They gathered around the dining table, the warm light from the chandelier creating an intimate atmosphere. John began to share with the family some of the joyful memories from his SEAL training in Coronado, California. He reminisced about the grueling days at Bud S, where he and his friends had to swim 2 miles in the frigid 50-degree water. But those stories weren't just about the pain. They were valuable lessons in perseverance and friendship. Things that now, reflected in Emily and Lily's eyes, felt like they were coming to life all over again. Laughter filled the air, and the atmosphere became more vibrant. John realized that his current life was the greatest reward he had earned after years of dedication. Happiness overflowed in their tiny apartment, and John knew that no matter how tough life got, as long as he had his family by his side, everything would be just fine. And so John's peaceful life is not just filled with happy moments, but also with memories, stories, and the people he loves. He blesses the beautiful days ahead, where love and connection will forever be the guiding light that leads them through all of life's challenges. Near Times Square, where the bustling life of Manhattan is always filled with laughter and the sounds of traffic, a summer afternoon turned dark when a terrible event unfolded. John was at home, about 5 miles away, when he received an urgent call from the NYPD. The voice on the other end trembled as it announced that a massive explosion had just occurred on 42nd Street, where his wife Emily was driving their Ford Explorer with their little daughter, Lily, inside. A wave of anxiety surged within John. He couldn't comprehend what was happening, but a powerful instinct compelled him to rush to the scene. As John left the house, he felt each moment stretch out like hours. He sped down the familiar roads like a gust of wind, his speed exceeding the limit, but everything felt strangely foreign now. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily and Lily, the two most important women in his life. The image of Emily smiling behind the wheel and Lily joyfully singing her favorite song flooded his mind, making it impossible for him to contain his fear. As John approached the explosion site, he was met with a scene of chaos. Thick black smoke billowed from a charred SUV, and debris flew around like pieces of a nightmare. The wail of fire truck sirens and the screams of the crowd blended into a tragic symphony that no one wanted to hear. He stopped, his feet seemingly glued to the ground, as he watched firefighters working tirelessly to extinguish the flames consuming the vehicle. A cold wind swept through, carrying the acrid smell of burning and dense smoke, making him feel suffocated. Stepping into the crowd, John desperately searched for the figures of the two women he loved, but among the faces filled with anxiety, all he saw was chaos. When he asked a nearby police officer, the answer felt like a knife stabbing into his heart. They hadn't found Emily and Lily, and they were in the process of rescue operations. In that moment, all hope seemed to vanish. He sank to his knees, the pain surging within him like a violent wave crashing down, sweeping everything away. As the ambulance lights flashed, John suddenly heard a faint call. He turned around and saw a firefighter, his face smeared with dirt, struggling to pull a small figure out of the vehicle. His heart stopped when he realized it was Lily, but as they laid her down on the ground, John recognized the horrifying truth. She wasn't breathing anymore. Tears streamed down his face as he rushed to embrace his daughter's lifeless body, his heart aching as he felt the coldness of her tiny form. Memories of playing with Lily, the evenings spent reading stories before bed, all played like a slow-motion film in his mind. And then, in the midst of despair, a fire of rage ignited within John. Who did this? Why should innocent lives be the price to pay? He stood up, his eyes filled with determination. That guy, the ones behind this explosion, would have to pay. John knew he couldn't let this pain be just a memory. He wouldn't allow Emily and Lily's deaths to become a meaningless sacrifice. His life had been shattered, but from the depths of his pain, determination became his weapon. John took a deep breath, steadied himself, and began to dig into the people behind the explosion. He wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth, until he brought justice for those he loved. Even though the road ahead was fraught with obstacles, he knew he had to keep moving forward. The fight for revenge started here, and John would never rest until everything was made right. John stood in front of the NYPD precinct in Manhattan, a place where heartbreaking cases are recorded, but not always solved. 2 miles away from the crime scene, the air here felt heavy, just like the sense of helplessness flooding his mind. Each step into the precinct hit him like a punch to the face of reality, where the laws were twisted by unseen forces. Detective Mike, a middle-aged man with a hefty build and salt and pepper hair, greeted John with a gaze weighed down by worry. "John, I get what you're after, but this case is like a bottomless swamp. We don't have any cameras rolling, and there are no witnesses," Mike sighed, his large fingers gliding over a thick file. Those pages held details that both of them knew would be hard to turn into a positive outcome. John couldn't hold back his emotions. He had known Emily, an ex-girlfriend and an investigative journalist. She was digging into the money laundering activities of the Gambino family, one of the most notorious mafia groups in New York. He recalled their conversations about the challenges the government faced, the things those in power always tried to bury. Now, with Emily gone, everything seemed clearer than ever. Her death was not just a personal tragedy. It was a shock that made John realize the brutality of this world. Suddenly, a man in an elegant suit walked in, his gaze filled with authority. The city lawyer, a familiar face but one without a name, appeared like a ghost between the two men. He smiled, but that smile brought no warmth. "I think we should stop here, John. This case could be buried if you're not careful," he hinted, his voice as cold as ice. John felt like something was tightening around his heart. A wave of anger and helplessness surged within him, ready to swallow everything whole. He couldn't accept the idea of letting the truth be buried. His breath quickened as he left the station, each step feeling heavier than the last. He decided to walk a mile to the Brooklyn Bridge, where the East River flowed lazily beneath the shimmering city lights. Standing on the Brooklyn Bridge, John gazed into the distance, where the lights shimmered like stars on the water's surface. The pain of loss, the anger, and the feeling of betrayal swirled within him. He vowed, as a promise not just to himself but also to Emily, that he would not let her death and the brutality of the Mafia be forgotten. The East River, with its secrets buried beneath the surface, seemed to bear witness to his oath. Each tear that fell was like a cry for help, a challenge to the forces trying to crush the truth. John knew this battle wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to forge his own path, no matter the obstacles ahead. His steps grew steadier, like a warrior who had discovered his mission. In a world rife with corruption, he would become a small but resilient light, pushing back the darkness. And in that moment, amidst the flow of life and death, John no longer felt powerless. He had found strength in his pain, the strength to confront the criminals that even the legal system feared. His battle had only just begun, but the determination within him burned fiercely, like a flame that would never go out. In the dim light of his small Brooklyn apartment, John sat amidst a tangled mess of files, his heart heavy with worry. Outside, the blaring horns and hurried footsteps of passers-by couldn't shake the deep loneliness that gripped his soul. Emily, the woman he once loved, had now become a victim in an endless war between rival gangs. Every piece of information about her was meticulously documented in the pages he was flipping through, and his heart felt like it was being torn apart as he saw the bank account numbers in the Caymans, where Gambino, the infamous Mafia boss, was siphoning off the money that Emily was supposed to have. Breath escaping from his parched lips, John stood up, deciding not to let helplessness take over his life any longer. He opened the safe, his gaze landing on the M4 carbine and the KA bar knife, tools he had once wielded during the grueling years of SEAL training. Images of precision shooting drills at 500 yards flashed in his mind, a reminder of the skill and determination he once possessed. Now, all he could do was turn those memories into the strength he needed for revenge. With a burning determination in his heart, John drove his sleek black Dodge Charger into Little Italy, where dark secrets lurked in the shadowy alleys. The 4-mile stretch felt shorter beneath his feet, yet each meter he passed felt like a heartbeat racing faster. The roar of the engine blending with thoughts of Emily, and everything she had endured. As he parked, John was no longer an ordinary man. He was a storm about to break. Sneaking into the social club, John felt the oppressive atmosphere, thick with fear and anticipation. The dark 100-foot hallway led him to where Joey, a low-level Mafia henchman, was sitting at a table nursing a drink. Joey, weighing in at 180 pounds, wasn't a formidable opponent, but his arrogance and smugness could cost him dearly. John stood silently in the shadows, his eyes fixed on Joey. He was laughing and joking, completely unaware that death was creeping closer. In a sudden moment of clarity, John decided to take action. He stealthily made his way toward the narrow alley, where light barely flickered from distant street lamps. With each step, his heart pounded harder as if bracing for a life-or-death struggle. Finally, when he was close enough, John tightened his grip on the Ka-bar knife in his hand, filled with determination. As he got closer, John was no longer the man who had once loved Emily. He had become a machine of vengeance. He lunged at Joey, wrapping his hands around his throat with the force of his hatred. The loud sounds from the club seemed to fade away, leaving only the gasping breaths of Joey and the thunderous beating of John's heart. Joey couldn't scream, couldn't escape, and in that moment, John felt the overwhelming power of himself. "Information about Gambino," John whispered, his voice sharp as a knife. "Tell me, and you'll live." Fear was evident in Joey's eyes, but he still revealed nothing. John knew he was just a pawn in this game, but his determination left no room for escape. With each passing second, John felt a renewed strength within him. He was not just searching for information, he was searching for himself, seeking justice for Emily. Emotions surged, as if everything around him had become part of this fight. His life had changed forever, and now nothing could stand in the way of his determination. But in that moment, John understood that revenge wasn't just about gathering information or punishing the enemy. It was also a journey of self-discovery, a way to heal the wounds that life had inflicted. Certainly, the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but with every passing second, John was ready to face it all for love and justice. Night falls on the Lower East Side, the glow from the neon signs flickering and blinding, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and the hustle of the city. In a narrow alley about 150 feet long, where the stench of garbage hangs heavy in the air, John stands facing Joey, a man whose eyes are filled with fear. The gloomy surroundings weigh down the atmosphere, as if the cold wind from the dark corners is pushing life away. John, a former SEAL, has learned how to apply psychological pressure to force his enemies to reveal the truth. He stares straight into Joey's eyes, each question hitting like arrows aimed directly at the man's vulnerabilities. "Carlo Gambino ordered Emily's assassination," Joey said, his voice trembling, his hands clenched tight as if trying to hold on to the last bit of strength he had. It was an unimaginable piece of news. Emily, the one John loved, the one who had brought light into his dark life. A wave of anger and pain surged in his chest, but John refused to let himself lose control. Suddenly, from the shadows, Vinny and Sal emerged like ghosts, each weighing around 200 pounds, their muscles rippling, exuding an air of menace. They smirked, but John knew this wasn't the time to panic. With a swift motion, he drew his Ka-bar knife from his belt, the bright light glinting off the razor-sharp blade. John charged in like a leopard, employing the fighting techniques he had honed for years. The cold blade plunged deep into Vinny's body, causing him to collapse to the ground, his hand still gripping the wound, as if he couldn't believe that his life had been cut short. Sal, the other one, was too stunned to react, left only to stare at the scene unfolding before him. John gave him no chance to escape. He drew his Glock 19, aiming straight at Sal from about 20 feet away. A gunshot rang out, shattering the silence of the dark alley, and Sal fell, a dark red stain spreading across the cold ground. With all his strength and skill, John had excelled in his first confrontation, but the emotions inside him were boiling over. He couldn't shake the image of Emily, her radiant smile, and her eyes filled with love. With every passing moment, his worry for her grew stronger. John knew that time wasn't standing still, and Carlo Gambino wouldn't sit idly by once he realized someone was onto his scheme. The loud sounds from afar were getting closer. Car engines, people shouting, and the anxiety in his heart weighed heavier. John quickly left the alley, sprinting to the street where his car was parked. He jumped in, fired up the engine, and immediately hit the gas, the car shooting off like an arrow. The 5-mile journey to Brooklyn felt like a chase, with each heartbeat pounding harder with every meter he covered. In his mind, the image of Emily kept flashing before him, like a vibrant painting, contrasting sharply with the darkness outside. John knew he had to find a way to save her, and nothing could stop him. A mix of anger, anxiety, and love merged into an unstoppable force, driving him forward. Deep down, he vowed that he wouldn't let anyone, not even Carlo Gambino, lay a finger on her. Amidst the bustling streets with the lights flickering on and off, John felt the pressure mounting. With each mile that passed, the excitement within him surged higher, like a massive wave ready to crash down. He knew that this battle was just beginning, and there was no turning back. With nothing but determination and a heart full of passion, John drove forward, heading toward the fight he was ready to face. In Brooklyn, shadows are lurking, and the next confrontation will determine the fate of both. John is ready for anything, for love, for Emily, and for his own life. In a cozy 800-square-foot apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, just about 2 miles from John's home, the air was thick and still, weighed down by dark secrets. The dim light from the desk lamp cast shadows on John's face, highlighting the creases of stress as he sat in front of his computer screen, surrounded by scattered documents. In his mind, the image of Emily, the woman he had loved and lost, kept resurfacing like a wound that would never heal. More than a year had passed since she left, but the memories of their passionate discussions felt as fresh as ever. Emily always had the ability to see through the essence of things. He vividly remembers a chilly evening when they sat together, the warm yellow light reflecting in her eyes. They talked about social issues, about the gaps in the legal system that corrupt individuals had exploited. She mentioned a well-known councilman, someone everyone praised, yet who had shady connections to the underworld. John, you know, money laundering isn't just a game for the wealthy. It's how this system protects itself. Her words echoed in his mind like a compelling warning. Now, in front of John lies a thick document from Joey, the man he has been tracking for months. The numbers, the transactions, and especially a deal worth $50 million through the New York port are waiting to be uncovered. Each line of text is like a piece of a puzzle in a larger picture he's trying to piece together. With the hacking skills he honed during his years as a SEAL, John begins to sift through Joey's email inbox, searching for evidence to link the criminals to powerful figures within the NYPD. Emotions swell within him, a mix of the thrill of adventure and the fear of what could happen if he isn't careful. As the emails appeared before him, John felt like he was flipping through the pages of his past. A blurry image of Emily during their happy days together, with her bright smile, came rushing back. He felt as if he was reliving those moments, and suddenly, a fierce determination ignited within him. John couldn't let the corrupt ones, the people who had caused Emily's death, slip away from the grasp of justice. He had to do something. After gathering enough evidence, John decided to plan an attack on the Gambino gang's warehouse, which, according to the information he had, was the hub for illegal transactions. His emotions were like a storm inside him, fueled by a fierce determination yet overshadowed by anxiety about what would happen next. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but every step he took was aimed at a noble goal: justice for Emily and other innocent lives. As night fell, the neon lights from the surrounding buildings illuminated the street, and John was ready. He stood in front of the mirror, reminding himself why he had to do this. His breath quickened, yet inside he felt an unusual calm. Each second ticked by like a battle with conflicting thoughts. But he knew this was not just a personal fight. It was a fight for the vulnerable, for the very values that Emily had believed in. As he stepped out of the apartment, his heart was filled with determination. Each step brought him closer to the truth, closer to justice, and closer to freeing the ghosts of the past. The night was dark, but within his soul, the light of hope shone brightly. John wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for everything good that Emily had stood for. He was ready for this battle, where light would triumph over darkness, and where the truth would be revealed. The sky over Brooklyn was dark and gloomy, the dim light from the old houses casting a chilling vibe. In a vast 10,000-square-foot warehouse in Red Hook, John stood silently, his eyes sharp as knives, staring intently at the stash the Mafia was hoarding. Inside, crates of drugs piled high, forming a mountain of sin. Within him, a fierce storm was brewing, and his resolve was ready for an inevitable showdown. Tonight, John is not just a lonely man. He has been preparing for this fight for months, holding in his hands 2 pounds of C4, an explosive powerful enough to wipe out 500 pounds of the drugs that the Mafia has ruthlessly peddled. He can feel the breath of evil, and now he will not let it continue to exist. Amidst the noise of the city, John slipped into an Italian restaurant in Little Italy, where Tony, the Mafia capo, was throwing a party for his henchmen. From the rooftop, 30 feet above, the dim lights inside sparkled like distant stars, but they couldn't ease the loneliness he felt. John carefully placed the listening device among the ventilation ducts, silently praying that the sounds of crime would be captured. As the music blared, John felt the pulse of life beneath him, but he wasn't there to enjoy it. He watched 3 henchmen lost in their drinks, and in that moment, time seemed to freeze. He knew that if he didn't act right now, things would only get worse. He dove down like a shadow, taking out the 3 henchmen with precise, powerful punches, leaving them no time to react. The silence of the night was suddenly shattered by gunfire. Tony, weighing in at a hefty 250 pounds, appeared like a storm. Looking into his eyes, John felt the brutality and malice. They faced each other from a distance of 50 yards, and in that moment, everything he knew converged into a single decision. He drew his M4 from behind, aiming straight at Tony. The shot rang out, but firing wasn't just about killing. It was about liberation. Although Tony didn't fall down immediately, the shock left him dazed. John didn't hesitate. He charged forward, overcoming obstacles with a strength he couldn't believe he possessed. A rush of excitement surged in his chest as he realized he was living in a moment that would change everything forever. As John ran toward the window, a loud explosion erupted, debris and smoke swirling up, creating a chaotic atmosphere. He jumped outside, feeling as if time had stopped as he fell freely to the ground. 10 feet, no turning back, just sheer determination and courage. The earth caught him, but not with a warm embrace. It was a powerful impact that made him feel like everything in his body was being torn apart. But there was no time to rest. The screams and gunfire echoed behind him as John sprang to his feet, running like he had never run before. His footsteps, like the pounding rhythm of a frantic song, propelled him away from the hell he had just escaped. Inside him, a whirlwind of emotions surged. Victory or defeat? He didn't know, but at least he had accomplished what he had set out to do. The darkness still enveloped him, but the light of hope began to break on the horizon. John knew that this fight wasn't over. What he had done would not only change his own life, but also leave a mark for those still living under the Mafia's rule. He wouldn't stop until justice was served and the criminals paid for their deeds. Life wouldn't allow him to back down, and from here, John's true journey was just beginning. In an abandoned building in the Bronx, just 8 miles from Manhattan, a heavy, eerie silence hangs in the air. This place stretches over 5,000 square feet. Its old, moss-covered walls seem to bear witness to the dark secrets of the past. John, a former SEAL, now stands at the brink of a risky decision. He has received false information about Carlo, the enemy who has instilled fear in so many. In John's mind, there's a piece of the puzzle that needs to be completed, and Carlo is the key. Luca, the ruthless leader of the Mafia, had been waiting for this moment. Standing at 6 feet tall, he exuded the confidence and coldness of someone who wielded power. Along with 6 other henchmen, he was ready for the counterattack they had meticulously planned. No one could have guessed that John, once the master of the shadows, would become the prey in this dangerous game. As John stepped into the building, the silence felt like a storm quietly brewing. He had no idea that with each footfall, he was walking straight into a trap. Suddenly, gunfire erupted, the AK-47 bullets tearing through the air, a chilling cacophony that felt like a deep wound in his soul. In a panic, John felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, blood oozing out, losing a pint of precious blood. He couldn't believe he had been cornered like this. With a stealth skill that only Navy SEALs possess, John hid in the shadows, making the most of every nook and cranny of the abandoned building. Silence returned, but only for a moment. 2 henchmen, full of arrogance and self-satisfaction, stepped inside. John had no choice but to fight back. He took down both of them, but a sense of doubt stirred within him. Could he really pull this off? When the gunfire ceased, John knew he couldn't stay here any longer. He had to retreat. Driving 10 miles to the secret apartment, fragmented images of the recent battle flashed through his mind. A sense of failure and doubt enveloped every thought of John. Why had he been trapped? Why were these enemies able to reach him so easily? Returning to his apartment, John stitched up his wound himself. His fingers trembled as he tried to find a way to ease the pain, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Each stitch felt like a knife cutting into his self-esteem. Memories of his fallen comrades flooded back, making it impossible for him to shake off the guilt. He had once been their protector, and now he had become a coward. In the cold, empty space of the apartment, John wondered if he could get back up after this fall. Each wound was not just a sign of hurt, but also a reminder of what had been. He felt like a bird trapped in a cage, lacking the strength to soar into the vast sky. The self-doubt grew stronger, and the question, "Do I have the strength to keep going?" constantly echoed in his mind. In the midst of the quiet moments, John realized that the battle was not just happening outside, but also within his own soul. The external enemies could attack his body, but the internal foes, doubts and worries, were far more destructive. He sighed, deciding not to let himself be defeated any longer. No matter how harsh life got, John would find a way to rise up, not just to confront the Mafia, but also to overcome himself. As the light of a new day began to break, John was ready for a new battle. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the honor and self-respect he had lost. He understood that every wound could be a lesson, and life was a journey filled with challenges, but also with hope. John wouldn't let his failures discourage him. He would fight, not just for himself, but for those who had once believed in him. New York Harbor at dawn, the early light filtering through the gray clouds, creating a vivid tapestry. The 600-foot container ship, anchored a mile from shore, shivers in the icy waters. John, a former SEAL, stands by the shore, his heart filled with determination. The human trafficking operation is running rampant on that ship, and he has to do something right now. Looking toward the ship, John mentally recited the carefully laid plans. With 4 Mafia bodyguards, each armed with a Beretta handgun, he knew he couldn't hesitate. The steam rising from the frigid 45-degree water felt like a warning, but John refused to let it deter him. He took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the water, then jumped in, diving deep to the ocean floor. Each stroke was fueled by a worry for the fates trapped inside the dark containers. After 200 yards, the biting cold had become a part of him, but nothing could make him hesitate. As he surfaced, John spotted a massive container ship right in front of him. He swam closer, and with a powerful leap, he climbed onto the deck. There was no time to rest. He immediately noticed 2 guards standing watch, their backs turned to him. With the skill of a soldier, John drew the knife from his side and quietly moved toward them. In just a few seconds, 2 bodyguards lay sprawled at his feet, caught completely off guard. John felt a quiet satisfaction welling up inside him. However, that satisfaction was quickly replaced by a rush of adrenaline as he spotted dozens of containers stacked high, each one holding dark secrets. What he needed to find was among the 100 victims being held captive. There was no time to hesitate. He began to search. Every time he opened a container door, his mind conjured the faces of those trapped inside. Each second felt like a century, and he could feel the weight pressing down on his heart. Finally, after relentless efforts, John found the documents containing crucial information about the human trafficking ring. He knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he had to get out of there immediately. Suddenly, gunshots rang out. One of the remaining bodyguards had spotted him. John didn't have time to think. He quickly ducked behind a 10-ace 8-foot container, dodging bullets that ricocheted off the cold steel. The adrenaline surged through him as he gripped the gun he had snatched from one of the bodyguards, bracing himself for the battle ahead. Bullets zipped through the air like sharp arrows, but John refused to let fear take hold. He held his breath, watching every move of the enemy, then suddenly emerged from behind the container, firing back. 2 bodyguards fell, but there was still 1 more left. The fight unfolded in an instant, and with a swift motion, John took down the last foe. At that moment, the confidence within him blazed like a fire, illuminating the dark space of the ship. Knowing that time was running out, John hurriedly ran out to the deck. The loud noises from below indicated that chaos had begun. He had no choice but to rush outside and find a way to escape. The speedboat was waiting under a tarp, and he dove in, starting the engine at breakneck speed. The waves crashed against the side of the boat, but he remained undeterred. John accelerated, the boat racing forward at 30 knots, and a sense of freedom flooded through him. All the fatigue and stress seemed to melt away, leaving only the pure joy of realizing that he had succeeded. On the shore, the images of the victims waiting for rescue flashed in his mind. And he knew that this battle wasn't over yet. But at least today, he had accomplished something. As the boat brought him back to shore, John felt like he had conquered a monumental challenge. He stood on the sandy beach, gazing out at the vast ocean, his heart brimming with hope. Even though the road ahead was still fraught with obstacles, he had proven that with enough determination and skill, anything was possible. This life, with all its hardships and trials, could never extinguish the spirit of people like John. And he knew that with each step he took, he was helping to bring light to those in dark places. In a secret apartment in Williamsburg, The dim neon lights cast a haunting glow on the bare walls, creating an atmosphere thick with tension and unease. John, a former cop with sharp eyes and a soul weighed down by sorrow, sat at a cluttered desk piled high with documents. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he flipped through each page, searching for clues that could lead him to those responsible for the city's devastation. Every line of text felt like a curse, every number a piece of the chaotic puzzle of the underworld. As the light from the computer screen illuminated his face, John suddenly realized a horrifying truth. The city councilman and the chief of the NYPD had accepted bribes totaling $10 million from the Gambino family, one of the most notorious Mafia crime syndicates. The names on that list weren't just corrupt individuals, they were the very ones who had turned the streets he once protected into crime-ridden hellholes. Emotions surged within him, a mix of anger and anguish intertwining, igniting an unquenchable fire. John started making a list of goals. He knew that to defeat these demons, he had to prepare meticulously. Each name, each image flashed in his mind like an action movie. He couldn't let anyone stand in his way. The memories of Emily, the woman he loved most, haunted his thoughts like a shadow. They had once dreamed of a peaceful life, but now, reality had turned into a nightmare. Emily was gone because of the corruption represented by these monsters. He couldn't let that happen again. John's inner monologue echoed like a sad melody, a struggle between reason and emotion. He remembered Emily's smile, her eyes filled with hope and the warmth she brought. But now, that image had become the driving force behind his determination like never before. He couldn't let these people continue to ruin the lives of innocent folks. He wouldn't stop until justice was served. At his desk, the sound of keyboard clicks echoed as John finished his list of targets. Each name was an opportunity for him to avenge what he had lost. He stood up and moved to a dark corner of the room, where the weapons were hidden away. He picked up a gun, heavy in his hand, but also providing him with a sense of security. Every detail of the gun, from its texture to its weight, made him acutely aware of the seriousness of the mission ahead. As John checked his gun, he wasn't just assessing its features. He was feeling the weight of responsibility. A bulletproof vest, weighing about 10 pounds, was strapped onto him, creating a sensation that was both solid and burdensome. Each time he buttoned up his vest, it felt like he was fastening his resolve deep within. He wasn't just gearing up for a fight. He was preparing for a battle for justice, for those who had been lost, for Emily. The lights in the apartment dimmed, as if preparing for a long, tough night ahead. John stood in front of the mirror, staring into his own eyes, where a fierce determination was reflected. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but that wouldn't hold him back. With each passing moment, he felt more and more clearly the reason behind his fight. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for everyone who had been hurt by this corruption. As John stepped out of his apartment, he felt the biting chill of a New York night. But inside him, the fire of determination burned bright. He knew that each step he took would bring him closer to an end for the criminals, and to restore justice for the innocent victims. This fight wasn't just his alone. It belonged to everyone who had lived in fear and suffering. John was ready, and now the light of justice would no longer be a distant dream. In a secret apartment hidden deep within the dark alleys of Brooklyn, John sat across from an old wooden table where the dim light from the desk lamp barely pierced the heavy atmosphere surrounding him. The image of Red Hook, an area notorious for its mafia activities, loomed in his mind like a grim painting, a place where evil and brutality were ever present. John took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of gunpowder and metal, familiar companions he had known for far too long. This was not just a simple mission. It was a promise he had made to Lily, the woman his heart had always longed for. Next to him was a meticulously prepared arsenal, an M4 carbine loaded with 30 rounds, a Glock 19, and two 2-pound smoke grenades. He focused on every detail of the weapons, checking each screw as if they were his last hope. Behind him, on the wall, hung a large painting of the Mafia's stronghold, a sprawling 20,000-square-foot area where Carlo, the infamous boss, held sway. John had spent hours mapping it out, marking Carlo's position and planning each of his moves. The image of Lily suddenly flashed in his mind, her bright eyes and radiant smile. They had shared happy moments together, where everything felt peaceful. But now, everything had changed. The shadow of the Mafia loomed over their little family. John recalled his promise. "I will protect you and our child." It was a vow he could not fail. He had seen the worry in Lily's eyes when she learned about the threats they faced, and that pushed him to take action. After preparing the weapons and the map, John gripped the steering wheel tightly, driving through the dark streets leading to Red Hook. The tension mounted with each passing block, the 3-mile distance feeling endless. The solitary street lights illuminated the pavement, but they couldn't chase away the anxiety in his heart. Images of the Mafia flashed in his mind, causing beads of sweat to form on his forehead. He knew these weren't just ordinary criminals. They were demons willing to do anything to protect their power. As he approached their stronghold, John turned off the headlights and hid in the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt the eerie silence, as if the air around him was holding its breath, waiting for a storm to break. Each step he took toward his goal was filled with determination and anxiety. In his mind, the images of Lily and the baby soon to be born were the only motivation pushing him forward. John moved quietly, his heart heavy yet filled with determination. He needed to complete this mission, not just for himself, but for his family. A wave of emotions surged within him: fear, resolve, and longing. He knew that what he was about to do could change their lives forever. As John stepped into the area near the headquarters, his gaze was sharp like that of a predator. Everything around him was shrouded in darkness, but he could sense the presence of enemies lurking somewhere. The thrill of anticipation surged within him as he silently prayed for the safety of Lily and the child. Each step he took felt etched into his memory, every footfall carrying the weight of responsibility. As John ventured deeper into that area, he knew there was no turning back. He was ready. Faced with dangers, he would not back down. His promise to Lily would be the guiding light for him in this dark night. He would protect his family no matter the cost. In the heart of Red Hook, amidst the dark and narrow streets, a 40-foot concrete warehouse loomed like a sleeping monster. Inside, the sounds of hushed exchanges and dry laughter echoed, creating a heavy atmosphere. This was the stronghold of the Mafia, where John, a former SEAL, was plotting his final battle. John slipped in through a 50-foot ventilation duct, leveraging the skills he had learned in the military. He knew that if he didn't act quickly, there wouldn't be another chance. His breath quickened, and his heart pounded like a war drum as he moved stealthily, trying not to make a sound. Every step he took was carefully calculated. He had one singular goal: to put an end to the reign of Carlo, the notorious Mafia boss who had instilled fear throughout the city. When he arrived, John placed the smoke grenade in a strategic position, waiting for the perfect moment to activate it. Inside, his tension was rising. He knew that Carlo's bodyguards, 8 strong and armed men, wouldn't give up easily, but nothing could hold him back now. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of smoke in the air, and then, like a snap of his fingers, he detonated the grenade. White smoke erupted, obscuring vision and creating chaos. The bodyguards panicked, shouting and running around in the dim darkness. John seized this opportunity, drawing his gun and springing into action. He took down 5 bodyguards in just a few brief seconds. each shot as precise as an arrow. However, he knew that the worst was yet to come. As the smoke began to clear, John saw Carlo standing in the corner of the warehouse, his gaze as cold as ice. Carlo, a 60-year-old man weighing 220 pounds, had a menacing presence. He held a dagger in his hand, the light glinting off the sharp blade. They locked eyes, and without a word, an inevitable battle had begun. John lunged at Carlo, but he quickly reacted, stabbing at the air. Pain shot through John as a sharp piece of metal sliced into his leg, but he refused to let himself fall. Despite the pain in his leg, his determination only grew stronger. He turned the tables with the seal techniques he had honed over the years. In a swift motion, John locked Carlo's neck, rendering him unable to move. The feeling of victory surged within John, but Carlo was not one to give up easily. He thrashed around, trying to break free from John's grip, and in that moment, John felt the strength of his enemy. They struggled, each wanting to seize power, to cling to life. Everything John had been through, all the hardships and challenges, now converged in this battle. He was fighting not just for himself, but for those who had lost their lives to the brutality of the Mafia. In the end, in a decisive moment, John tightened his grip, using all his strength to hold Carlo firmly. He had no energy left to resist, and finally, his ragged breathing began to fade. In that moment, John realized that it wasn't just him, but everything the Mafia had caused was also slowly disappearing. As Carlo collapsed, John felt a new light ignite within him. It wasn't just his personal victory, it was a triumph for justice. Tears streamed down his cheeks, not only from pain, but also from a sense of freedom, a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. The battle is over, but the fight against evil goes on. John stands up, though his legs ache, his spirit has been revived. He knows he must keep fighting, not just for himself, but for all those who have been hurt. Amid the rubble of the warehouse, light begins to shine through, like a sign of a new beginning. The warehouse sat on the outskirts of the city, the dim streetlights casting shadows over the dark corners where memories still haunted. John stood there, in the heavy atmosphere, his hand tightly gripping the Ka bar knife, its blade still stained with the marks of life and death. Before him, Carlo lay motionless, his eyes vacant as if devoid of any spark of life. That image twisted John's heart. He couldn't believe he had come to this point. It all started with the calls, the urgent sounds, from Emily, the girl who once ignited the fire of justice within him, the one he had promised to protect. Reflecting on those warm afternoons, when Emily sat by the Hudson River, the dazzling lights of Manhattan twinkling in the distance, she spoke about the importance of justice. "We have to stand up, John. Don't let the bad guys win," she said, her eyes shining like stars. Her words echoed in John's mind like a spell, a source of strength. But now, standing before this heartbreaking scene, he wondered if he could truly do that. His hands still trembling, John dialed Detective Mike's number. Mike's voice came through the phone, calm yet filled with determination. John briefed him on the situation, about Carlo and the crucial documents he had gathered. "I'm handing Carlo over to you, Mike. I want you to prosecute him. He can't get away with this," John said, each word heavy with responsibility. Mike promised to take care of everything, vowing that this pain wouldn't go unpunished. As the call ended, John felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had done the right thing, but the cost was incredibly high. Before leaving the warehouse, John glanced back at Carlo one last time, his emotions swirling between anger and pity. He had chosen this path, and now he had to face the consequences. John turned away, stepping outside, the cold air hitting his face, but inside, he felt a little warmer. John's footsteps were steady as he walked a mile toward the riverbank, where the lights of Manhattan stretched out like a shimmering silk ribbon in the dark night. Each step was a release, fading away the haunting images in his mind. He recalled the times he had stood by the river with Emily, their candid conversations about life, about dreams. He had once said that Manhattan was a place of opportunities, where justice could shine bright. As he reached the riverbank, John paused and gazed into the distance. The shimmering lights reflected on the water, creating an enchanting picture. In that moment, he felt a sense of maturity within him, like a seed that had sprouted after a storm. Facing the city, he realized that life isn't just about simple choices, but a continuous chain of decisions, where every action can shape the future. John took a deep breath, feeling the peace slowly returning. He had chosen his path, the path that Emily had once dreamed of. It wasn't just about revenge or seeking justice. It was about being true to himself and the values he had always cherished. Moving forward, John knew he would never go back to the old road, where darkness and fear reigned. He had found the light within his own heart, and now he would continue the journey to pursue the dream of justice that Emily had ignited. And in that moment, amidst the sparkling lights of Manhattan, John felt he had truly grown up. He was not just a man who had overcome suffering, but a warrior for justice, someone who would never back down from the fight for what is right. That was John's choice, and he would continue on his path, not just for himself, but for those who had lost, and for the dreams yet to be realized. On a dreary morning in Brooklyn, weak light filtered through the window of a small coffee shop. The air in the cafe was rich with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of the grinder humming steadily, blending with the murmur of quiet conversations. On the TV screen in the corner of the cafe, a reporter was breaking news about a shocking arrest. The image of Carlo, a councilman known for his shady connections, flashed brightly yet ominously. John, a middle-aged man with deep-set eyes, watched intently, unable to tear his gaze away from the screen. "This arrest is a major turning point," the reporter declared, his voice brimming with excitement. "The New York police conducted a massive operation leading to the arrest of 20 members of the Gambino crime family. They seized about $5 million in cash from this councilman's office, thanks to information provided by an anonymous tipster." John took a sip of coffee, the bitter taste lingering in his throat. But inside, he felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. He thought about his relentless efforts over the years, the fight against political manipulators and organized crime. The images on TV continued to move. NYPD officers were searching Carlo's office. Patrol cars crowded the outside, and the determined faces of the cops showed they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. John couldn't help but smile. The image of Carlo, of those who had harmed so many, was now tightly bound in the embrace of justice. He looked out the window and saw people passing by, seemingly unaware that a great battle was unfolding right in the heart of this city, a battle in which he had played a part. The emotions inside John surged like a wave, rising from the depths and crashing outward. Hope, satisfaction, and a touch of pride intertwined in his mind. Images of the victims, those who had once endured oppression, began to surface in his thoughts. He recalled the long, endless nights when he spent hours poring over documents, gathering evidence, all to finally hold the powerful accountable for their actions. The coffee shop suddenly became lively, with everyone turning their eyes to the screen, sharing in the joy and excitement together. John felt the shift in the atmosphere, like a new wave washing over Brooklyn. People began to engage in animated conversations about the future, holding on to the hope that the tough days would pass and the light of justice would always shine through. As the news wrapped up, the reporter declared that this was just the beginning, that there was still much to be done to clean up this city from crime. John stood up, left his table, and stepped out of the cafe. The cold wind blew through, but he didn't feel the chill. He only felt the warmth of hope. He walked down the familiar streets, past the old buildings, and suddenly everything seemed to come alive. Inside him, a new belief was blossoming, that justice would never waver. John knew that this fight wasn't over, but today, he could feel the city transforming. The revival of dreams that had been buried under the grime of crime and corruption. It was a special day, a day that people like John had been waiting for. Justice had been served, and in that moment he realized that hope is always present, as long as we don't give up. In the quiet space of Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, where the towering trees reach for the sky, John stood silently before the graves of Emily and Lily, just about 2 miles from his home. But now, that distance felt like an endless stretch. His feet moved slowly, weighed down by a heavy heart filled with longing. In his hands, he held a bouquet of pristine white roses, a symbol of the love and hope he once had for the 2 most precious women in his life. He gently placed the bouquet on the grave as a farewell, but also as a promise that he would never forget. Memories rush back like waves lapping at the shore. He recalls the grueling SEAL training, where perseverance and determination were forged day by day. The image of Lily with her radiant smile always warms his heart. She once said, "Dad, you'll be my hero, right?" John had longed to be a hero, not just as a soldier, but also as a father and a husband. Now, standing before their grave, he wonders if he has fulfilled that mission. "I did it," John said to himself, his voice ringing out clearly in the stillness. It wasn't just a self-affirmation. It was a declaration to Emily and Lily that he had fought with everything he had for them. Despite enduring heartache and losses that could never be filled, he felt something powerful beginning to take shape within him. A new determination, a renewed sense of purpose. Lost in his thoughts, John's phone suddenly vibrated. He looked at the screen and saw an email from the crime-fighting organization he had once been a part of. They were inviting him to collaborate, seeking the help of someone with his experience to investigate new cases. A wave of excitement washed over him, like a glimmer of light piercing through the dark night. John realized that even though the pain was still there, life went on, and he still had the chance to do something meaningful. Thinking about the new job, he felt like he had just received a precious gift from fate. It wasn't just an opportunity to help others, but also a way for him to rediscover himself. Stepping out of the cemetery, John took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air of Brooklyn fill his lungs. The sunset began to descend, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and orange, and in the distance stood the silhouette of Manhattan, with its skyscrapers reaching 400 feet high, like symbols of hope and dreams. John walked under the sunset, feeling lighter in his heart. Each step felt tied to a new determination, a fresh start. He understood that no matter how tough life got, he could still find beauty in the little things. And most importantly, he could still do something good for this world. This was how John chose to remember Emily and Lily, by living fully for the values they had always cherished. As the light of the day slowly faded, John felt a sense of peace in his soul. He had found a new purpose, not just for himself, but for those who had once loved him. In that moment, he understood that love never truly disappears. It simply transforms. And that was the strength that would help him overcome any challenges ahead. Thank you for joining Legendary Narratives on this emotional journey of John, a man who transforms pain into a flame of justice. From the dark streets of Brooklyn to the final battle at Red Hook, his story reminds us that, no matter how harsh life can be, hope and courage are always the guiding light. John fights not just for Emily and Lily, but for the values we all hold dear: family, justice, and truth. Please leave a like, Subscribe to the Legendary Narratives channel and share what touched you the most. We truly appreciate your support. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay tough, stay proud, and see you soon.